Harvey Weinstein's sentencing today, a landmark moment for the Me Too movement and potentially for the criminal justice system, where it's notoriously difficult to even get a guilty verdict in cases like this. NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos is with me now. And Danny, you warned us after Weinstein was convicted not to expect a decades-long sentence, that he could have been sentenced on the lower end of the range. I mean,
yes,
that was a reasonable thing to say. I think a lot of people were expecting that. He gets 23, 29 was the max. Are you surprised? I think a lot of us were surprised to hear that he got 2 decades in prison.
Thank you for pointing out my low estimate there, but I was surprised.
You were not alone, Danny.
No, you're right. I was not surprised. I mean, I was surprised because his maximum guideline sentence was 29 years. That's a maximum of 25 plus 4 years for each of the counts. And this sentence ended up approximating that. And you may say, well, 23 is not quite 29. Keep in mind, this is a defendant who is a first-time offender. So right off the bat, in most systems, federal and state, that's an offender that's going to get on the low end of the guidelines. That's just the way the system works. That's the formula that's applied in federal court. You're going to be in the lowest tier of defendants. Then you have the fact, his age and his illness. And age, at least in the federal system, studies have shown that older offenders like Harvey Weinstein in his age category are highly unlikely to reoffend. And that's a factor that can be presented to a judge at sentencing. Then you have his ill health and the fact that studies show that for every year of incarceration, you can expect to lose a year of life. So these are all factors that should be taken into consideration. And lastly, I should add that his defense pointed out that similarly situated defendants got on the order of 8 to 9 years. I think that's what they argued. Now, the data is hard to pull in New York State system as compared to the federal system. But if that's true, judges should try to sentence similarly situated defendants similarly. They're not required to. And this sentence is likely a lawful sentence because it falls within the guidelines. It'll be presumptively lawful. But it was high for the for his guidelines and his being a first-timer. And for that reason, I was surprised. Yeah,
I mean, Danny, look, I bring it up not to say, oh, Danny, you told us something wrong.
It's okay.
But because I think all of us watched that today and said, wow, look at that. I don't think any of us looked and said, oh, yeah, we're pretty sure he was going to get the high end of the range. I think most people kind of gasped and said, whoa, that's a little bit of a departure because you based your thoughts on this on past example.
I did expect that. You know, sentencing can be a bit of a roulette wheel because the rules of evidence are relaxed. You're supposed to present, as a criminal defense attorney, virtually anything that you can get before the judge that will garner sympathy. And Harvey Weinstein had a lot of things that made him very not sympathetic. He had a lot of things that were beyond his control that made him in a category of defendants who are likely to get lesser sentences. First-time offender, his age, those other factors. But the judge clearly here took into account other conduct that he wasn't actually even convicted of. And that, believe it or not, is permissible in some courts. In the federal system, for example, you can be sentenced according to the conduct that you were charged with, but not actually convicted of. And defendants are shocked to find this out, that they win an acquittal on some counts, and then they're being sentenced as if they had committed the crime. So this is something that judges do from time to time, depending on the system, depending on the court. And so it wasn't that much of a surprise that this court took into account his conduct and his character as a whole.
He was barely even sentenced today, and the district attorney in L.A. was already talking about the case that he faces there. They are trying to extradite him to California to face trial there. How could this potentially impact that?
Consider this. Once Harvey Weinstein leaves New York and goes to stand trial in California, there will be one major distinction. If convicted, he will no longer be a first-time offender. And that automatically puts you into the higher strata of sentencing guidelines. So he's likely to get, under California has a somewhat unique 3-level system. He's likely to get the highest end of the sentencing guidelines in California if he's convicted of any of these crimes, because he's rolling into California as not only someone with a prior record, but a very serious prior record. So the California case is now the new battleground, in addition to appealing the New York case and fighting likely on issues like the jury verdict form and the jury instructions. Those are probably his most fertile ground for appeal here in New York.
How about other cases not related. Other sexual assault cases not related to Harvey Weinstein. We know the Me Too movement is about much more than that. Are we getting ahead of ourselves to think that a case like this, a verdict like this, a lengthier sentencing like this will maybe set I don't want to use the word precedent, but could maybe set a different tone for those types of cases? Is that unlikely?
It will, and it already has.
Okay.
Not necessarily in prosecutions, but what we've seen is a growing trend in what we call prior bad acts evidence.
Okay.
Harvey Weinstein was an example. Bill Cosby was an example. For many of these victims, their time to sue or to prosecute may have passed because of the statute of limitations. But prosecutors in these sex cases are increasingly using what we call prior bad acts evidence. And if certain conditions are met, they can march in victims whose time to prosecute has long since passed. We saw that in the Harvey Weinstein case with an allegation of rape that occurred in the, I believe, early 90s. I could be wrong about the exact year. But that shows that prosecutors are willing and able, if they use the rules strategically, to bring in victims who otherwise would never have an opportunity to be victims and be in court and testify and point out their assailant.
23 years in prison for Harvey Weinstein. Danny, thanks for breaking it down for us.
Thank you.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.